Janashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan Ki, Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki, Sri Caitanya Caritamrta Ki, Jai Samaveda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki, Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Before we get started with the last chapter of Caitanya Caritamrta Madhya Leela, just a few announcements. We have started a new Bhakti Shastri batch a couple of weeks ago. So this is the fourth batch of Bhakti Shastri we are doing here in Sydney. So those of you who would like to join, we have kept the registrations open until the end of first chapter, which will be probably another 5 classes. So any of you are interested, you're welcome to join. You'll find information of that in our social media website, Facebook and WhatsApp. This Thursday, which is 3rd of March, we are going to celebrate the Thiruba Festival. Thiruba is the Disappearance Day festival of His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. So this Thursday, 3rd of March, we'll have Kirtan starting at 6 p.m., 6:15. We'll have a talk by His Grace Narsimha Kavacha Prabhu. And then there'll be opportunity for devotees to come forward and do a glorification of Maharaj through their offerings. Then 7:15 will be Bhog offering, and there'll be a short video of Maharaj. And we'll do Pushpanjali Guru Puja, and at 8 p.m. we'll serve the Prasadam feast. So Thiruba is the disappearance day, the day when the pure devotees of the Lord, they stop their manifested Leela, at least to a mundane vision. We still celebrate it, even though on one level, if you see, it's a cause for lamentation, but still it's considered as the occasion when the pure devotees actually having fulfilled the mission of the Lord, they join the Supreme Lord back in their Nitya Seva in spiritual world. So it's a very special program. So please take this wonderful opportunity to come and know more about Maharaj. For those of you who have heard anything about Maharaj, you would know the amount of services he did for Srila Prabhupada, especially in spreading Sankirtan far and wide throughout with this legendary Sri Radha Damodar party. So it's a wonderful opportunity to come and pray to Maharaj so that we can imbibe the missionary spirit which he perfectly embodied. And on 18th of March, we are going to celebrate Gaura Purnima, the divine appearance day of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So on 18th of March, which is a Friday, we are going to celebrate Gaura Purnim. So usually in a year, if you see, the festival starts with the Nityananda Prabhu's appearance day. So Nityananda Prabhu does the opening ceremony, and then literally every month of the year we have one festival or the other. So February we have Nityananda Trayodasi, March Gaura Purnim, April Ram Navami, May Narsingha Chaturthasi, Gopinath's anniversary, June Snana Yatra, July Ratha Yatra, August Janmashtami, Prabhupada's Vaisa Puja, so on and so forth. September Srimati Radharani's appearance day, October Kartik Mas, November, Govardhan Puja, Diwali, December, Gita Jayanti, and then New Year, and then repeat. So, March 18th, which is a Friday, we are going to celebrate Gaura Purnim. For those of you who want to participate, already Prasadam feast is taken and so is deity dress sponsorship. But there are other items that are available, so hurry up before you miss out on the opportunity to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda Prabhu and the entire Panchatattva. So the details of that we published today. You can see that in our WhatsApp group as well as in Facebook page and website. All right, let's get started. Chapter 25. How all the residents of Varanasi became Vaishnavas. So this is Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, Madhya Lila, chapter 25. After converting into Vaishnavas all the residents of Varanasi who were headed by the sannyasis, and after completely educating and instructing Sanatana Goswami there, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to Jagannath Puri. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Sri Sanatana Goswami in all the conclusions of devotional service for 2 consecutive months. It's a long time. Krishna spoke to Arjuna about the science of Bhakti Yoga. Prabhupada says in one lecture for about 45 minutes. That's how long it took for Krishna to speak entire Bhagavad Gita. 2 consecutive months, 60 days, non-stop. So Sanatana Goswami, we can see he was specifically empowered by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to write Shastras on so many different topics as we have been discussing over the past many months. For as long as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Varanasi, it's the modern day Kasi, Benares, Paramananda Kirtaniya, who was a friend of Chandrasekhara's, chanted the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and other songs to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a very humorous way. When the Mayavadi sannyasis at Varanasi criticized Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord's devotees became very much depressed. To satisfy them, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed his mercy to the sannyasis. In the 7th chapter of Adi Lila, I have already elaborately described Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's deliverance of the sannyasis at Varanasi. But I shall briefly repeat it in this chapter. So you will see the description of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeating all the sannyasis in Varanasi. You will see that in 7th chapter of Adi Lila. The 5 features, the Supreme Lord Chaitanya in 5 features. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam, Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam, Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakyam, Namami Bhakta Shaktigam. So Panchatattva, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhar Shivas Thakur. So they are Panchatattva's. Each one of them are actually given a dedicated chapter to be glorified, or which is an Adi Lila, which Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami uses to glorify each one of them. Srivas Thakur may not see a separate chapter, but you will see glorification of that, and so is Gadadhar Pandit. But for Advaita Acharya, as well as for Nityananda Prabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you will see exclusive chapters glorifying about their position, about their glories actually in detail. So Adi Lila chapter 7, which discusses about the 5 features of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You will find this pastime already. Nevertheless, he is just repeating this pastime here very briefly. When the Mayavadi sannyasis were criticizing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu anywhere and everywhere in Varanasi, the Maharashtrian Brahmana, hearing this blasphemy, began to think about it unhappily. So just to give you a background, Varanasi is considered to be one of the headquarters of Mayavadi sannyasis. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is still on his Vrindavan tour. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, before going to Vrindavan, he stops over in Varanasi to give his Sangha to Chandrasekharacharya, Tapan Mishra. Then from there he goes to Vrindavan. So when he comes to Varanasi, at that time, the Maharashtrian Brahmana, who is his host, he tells Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that these local sannyasis, they are criticizing you. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to go to a temple of Vishnu called Bindu Madhava. So there he would chant and dance. So when the news of this goes to the sannyasis, they were mistaking Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be a sentimentalist, and they were thinking sannyasa means it's supposed to be meant for detachment. It's supposed to be study of Vedanta. One should not even talk in public so much. And here we see a sannyasi chanting and dancing. So when they start to blaspheme this way, the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they get very disturbed and they come and inform Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just responds to them with a smile. And then he just heads towards Vrindavan, as was the original plan. And then on the way back, you will see he instructs Rupa Goswami. Then he comes to Varanasi, and the first 2 months of his return trip during Varanasi, he had already instructed Sanatana Goswami. And now, same problem is being brought to him again by the Maharashtrian Brahmana Tapan Mishra, Chandrasekhar Acharya, that these Mayavadi sannyasis, they are blaspheming you, my Lord, please do something about it. So that's the background here. So when the Mayavadi sannyasis were criticizing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu anywhere and everywhere in Varanasi, the Maharashtrian Brahmana, hearing this blasphemy, began to think about this unhappily. The Maharashtrian Brahmana thought, whoever closely sees the characteristics of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately realizes his personality and accepts him as the Supreme Lord. If by some means I can assemble all the sannyasis together, they will certainly become his devotees after seeing his personal characteristics. So you will come across similar pastime in lives of many acharyas. Like there was a disciple of Ramanujacharya by name Dhanurdas. So one day when the Supreme Lord Ranganath, if you go to Srirangam, Srirangam is a place where they celebrate festivals 300 days in a year. It's wonderful culture. It's a beautiful temple city. You can still, even if you go now, you will feel transported to a different world. It's an island surrounded by Mother Kaveri. It's still very fertile, like Mayapur. When you go to Mayapur these days, you'll be so amazed with how lush green and how fertile the land is. And we can only think this is 500 years into Kali Yuga, or like more than 5,000 years obviously, but we can imagine how much more fertile it must have been during Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, 500 years ago. So same thing, if you go to Srirangam, even now you will see it's so fertile on the basin of river Kaveri. So he sees there Ramanujacharya is standing and they are bringing the Supreme Lord in procession and everyone is worshipping, and suddenly he sees a person who is well built holding an umbrella, Chattari, for someone who he thought was very beautiful, a Mataji, and he was walking backwards looking at her. And then Ramanujacharya, he looks at him, he takes pity on him that here is Supreme Lord going in procession, at least if he takes little darshan, he'll go back to Godhead. But look at what he is doing. So he calls him and he says, what are you doing? Then he says, these eyes of this girl, this is the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. So then Ramanujacharya says, if I show you another pair of eyes which is more beautiful, what will you do? Then he says, impossible. Then he says, no, I have something else that can beat this. Come this evening. Then he takes him to the Shayanarati of Lord Ranganathji. If you see Ranganathji, when you look at him, you will understand what beauty means, what majesty means, and when you look at him, you will have no doubts. Who is the Supreme Lord? First time I still remember, when you go, he looks up and he's like lying down. So beautiful, and he has got such beautiful eyes. They actually have it in silver. So when you look at it, you will feel so mesmerized by that. So when he goes for Shayanarati and then he looks at the eyes of the Supreme Lord, and when he is taking darshan of that, Ramanujacharya is begging Ranganathji, look at him, unfortunately he is bewildered by Maya, so please give him some mercy, please attract him. And then when he looks at him, he gives up everything, falls at Ramanujacharya's feet, and then Ramanujacharya accepts him as his disciple. And then the girl who he was after, she was also a great devotee, and then they both get married and they serve Ramanujacharya. There are a lot of pastimes actually there about their detachment, how much they served Ramanujacharya and how much they served the disciples and the other devotees actually in Srirangam. So you will see similar mood. Another pastime comes to mind, like in Krishna Lila, if you see, Krishna, he married in Dwaraka 16,108 queens. Of 16,108, 16,100 he married after killing Baumasura, also known as Narakasura. But of the other 8 queens, if you see one of the queen, actually 8 queens, the principal queen is Rukminiji. So Rukmini, then Rukmini Krishna, she is daughter of Bhishmaka. We know the pastime. Krishna goes, marries her, and in the process he also defeats her brother Rukmi, and then brings her back and he marries. So you will find, then you have Jambavati. Krishna marries, Jambavati is daughter of Jambavan. Krishna marries after defeating Jambavan in the Shamantaka jewel pastime. Something related to Shamantaka jewel is also, when he comes back retrieving the jewelry, Satrajit, who is the owner of the Shamantaka jewel, he feels repentant that he had blasphemed Krishna, that he went around spreading rumor that Krishna is the one who had killed his brother Prashena. So Krishna actually brings the Shamantaka jewel and he narrates the whole story about what happened to Prashena. He was actually attacked by a lion in turn attacked by Jambavan, and here is the jewel. So now Satrajit feels very sad, and then he brings, as a way of asking for forgiveness, so he comes, offers the Shamantaka jewel, and he offers his daughter also, which is Satyabhama. So that's the third queen, you will see. Kalindi, then Krishna goes with Arjuna to forest. Arjuna goes for hunting. Krishna goes there to monitor his training. And at that time, Yamunaji, she is Kalindi. She comes, approaches Arjuna. Actually, Krishna seeing Kalindi, he asks Arjuna to go and find about the details about who is this girl who is actually standing there on the bank of Yamuna. And then she introduces herself as Kalindi, and then she comes, Krishna. She introduces herself as Kalindi, and she is Yamunaji. So Krishna marries there. And then you will find, if you read a Krishna book, there is pastime of another 4 more queens that's given. Mitravinda, she is the princess of Avantipur. Avantipura is the place where Krishna and Balaram, they went to Gurukul of Sandipani Muni. Modern day it's called Ujjain, but in ancient times it's called Avantipura. So Mitravinda, and then Krishna goes, meets king of Koshala. Koshala princess is Satya or Nagnajiti. The king's name is Nagnajit, so she is also called as Nagnajiti or Satya. So that's where Krishna goes, tames 7 bulls, and then he marries her, brings her back. So you will see that pastime. So that's 6th queen. 7th queen is Bhadra. Bhadra is Krishna, just like Krishna had Kunti Maharani as his aunt, Krishna also had another aunt by name Shrutakirti. So Krishna marries Bhadra there also. And then the 108th queen, 16,108th queen, her name is Lakshmana. She is Madras princess. And Krishna goes, marries her in Swayamvara. Actually, he just kidnaps her during the Swayamvara. Now during Mitravinda's Swayamvara, what happens? Krishna goes. Swayamvara means, in ancient times, the princes were given the opportunity to choose the prince. So in order for a princess to choose her bride, a bridegroom, a future husband, all the qualified princes of the neighboring states and the other kingdoms, they'll be invited. They'll be sent an invite and they'll be assembled for the Swayamvara. So then, when they are assembled there, then the bride can then go and garland whoever she likes, and they will get married that way. So you'll see Draupadi also. So in many ancient times, in many ancient pastimes actually, you will see how different princesses they actually married. So in Mitravinda's case, in the Swayamvara, all the princes were there, Krishna is also there. So Mitravinda, she is goddess of fortune. So she naturally comes and garlands Krishna, and Krishna brings her. But as Krishna is taking her, just like it happened in Rukminiji's pastime, All the other princes, they became very envious of Krishna and they tried to attack. And then Krishna defeats all of them. However, Krishna's reputation of his chivalry, of his bravery, precedes him. So as soon as, in Mitravinda's case, as soon as the princes, they see Krishna, they keep quiet. Because they know if they try attacking Krishna, they're going to lose their life. So if you see in that pastime, it's given in Bhagavatam, they see Krishna is actually taking Mitravinda amidst all the princes. Bhagavatam says, knowing very well about the supreme nature of Krishna and what he could do to them, all the other assembled princes, they were so scared, they just looked at each other and looked down. It's given. Just looking at Krishna, it instilled so much fear in their heart, and they know if we start, they stand no chance, and none of them are ready to lose their lives in a fight. And they know what happened to Rukmi. So just looking at the Lord can actually evoke, but depends on the mood of the Lord. So here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in, there Krishna is in fighting mood as a Kshatriya. Here, in that particular instance, Krishna is not in fighting mood at any time, actually. So, but here, if you see, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is Namo Mahavadanya, he is the most munificent avatar. So here Maharashtrian Brahmana is thinking, if by some means I get the sannyasis to actually just look at him and just observe him, what he is doing, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is doing, then their heart will get changed, it will get transformed. He was very convinced about that. I shall have to reside at Varanasi the rest of my life. If I do not try to carry out this plan, I shall certainly continue to suffer mental depression. This is what Maharashtrian Brahmana is thinking. Thinking like this, the Maharashtrian Brahmana extended an invitation to all sannyasis of Varanasi. After doing this, he finally approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to extend him an invitation. At this time, Chandrasekhara and Tapan Mishra both heard blasphemous criticism against Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and felt very unhappy. They came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet to submit a request. So you can see, simultaneously, everyone is putting forth the same request. Maharashtrian Brahmana is also inviting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come and meet the sannyasis. But then, at the same time, Chandrasekhara and Tapan Mishra. Tapan Mishra is father of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. We have 6 Goswamis. Sri Rupa, Sanatana, Bhatta Raghunath. He says. So Raghunath Bhatta Goswami's father is Tapan Mishra. So they came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet to submit a request. They submitted their request, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, seeing his devotees' unhappiness, decided to turn the minds of Mayavadi sannyasis. While Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was seriously considering meeting with the Mayavadi sannyasis, the Maharashtrian Brahmana approached him and extended an invitation. The Brahmana submitted his invitation with great humility, and he touched the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So here we can see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, first time when he comes to Varanasi, he sees the envious nature of the sannyasis. He is ignoring them and he is going to Vrindavan. But then when he is coming back, now he is being petitioned by his own associates who tell him, "My Lord, please deliver them." It's mentioned of the qualities, unlimited qualities of Srimati Radharani. 25 qualities is given, but of them, her karuna, her most merciful nature, that attracts Krishna the most. Krishna gets attracted even to mercy of Srimati Radharani. Nobody is as merciful as Srimati Radharani. So here also we can see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is merciful. Devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are even more merciful. So you will see many instances, actually few instances, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself rejects somebody, but the devotees will bring them back, and somehow they'll bring them back again to be associated. You will see instance of Mukunda Datta. The pastime when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells Mukunda Datta, he is not chaste. He is going and hearing Brahmavadi class. He is going and hearing Mayavadi class. Whoever invites him, he is just going everywhere. I don't want to see him. So then Mukunda Datta gets very morose, you know that pastime. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when they petition, the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu request the Lord, "My Lord, when will Mukunda Datta be able to see you?" Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, "Not for next 10 million births." When they share this news to Mukunda Datta, Mukunda Datta jumps up and down in ecstasy, saying, wow, doesn't matter. My Lord will still see me after 10 million births. Hari bol. So then, feeling so happy, when this news comes to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, all right, let him in. So you will see many instances. Okay, Kala Krishna. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes for South Indian tour, one of his associates, he goes, but somehow he gets influenced by nomadic tribe by name Bhattadaris. And then he leaves the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu, feeling so merciful on him, he goes to him and he reclaims him back. But as soon as the tour finishes, they come back to Puri. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, what kind of a servant have you sent with me? I don't want to associate with him anymore. Send him out like that. I don't want to see him. But then he goes and cries. And then falls at the feet of Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda Prabhu then comes to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and says, my Lord, you have come back from the tour after so many years. Somebody has to actually carry the message to inform devotees in Mayapur Dham. We have chosen someone as your servant to carry the message. Shall we send him? Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I'm okay. To send as my messenger whoever you choose. Then Nityananda Prabhu chooses Kala Krishna Prabhu. So you will see many instances like that, even though in some instances Krishna rejects, devotees still bring them back. Devananda Pandit, rejected by the Lord, brought back by Vakreshwar Pandit. So you will come across many instances. So that's why we have to be very careful when it comes to dealing with the devotees. Because the devotees are most merciful than even Supreme Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees are more merciful than Supreme Lord himself, than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Prabhupada is more merciful than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we have to be, if any sanity is there in us, in our mind, we need to feel extremely grateful to the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we need to find opportunities in whatever way we can to serve the mission. Srila Prabhupada says, chant Hare Krishna, spread this mission, distribute my books, give everyone an opportunity, distribute prasad. So we need to somehow or other try to further the mission, whatever way we can. So it's extremely important that we don't lose our gratitude. It's very easy, especially in Kali Yuga, with our Kali Yuga memory, to take things for granted. One day, 2 days, and then it's very easy. So we have to consciously make that effort to remember the mission of the Supreme Lord, remember the mission of Srila Prabhupada, and fulfill it. Like we don't know Krishna, we don't know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but we know Prabhupada. Through Prabhupada only we know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Through Prabhupada only we know who Krishna is. So even when it comes to practicing bhakti, we don't need to study any other scripture. Tarko Pratishta Shrutiyo Vibhinnam. There are like so many scriptures are there. And even inside bhakti, there are so many details that are given. Prabhupada says, if I tell you all the details, you will faint. Prabhupada says in one place. So, Prabhupada has given us the essence of the essence of the essence. Bhaktishwar Maharaj says, it is the duty of the Acharya to give the same ancient message of Krishna to the disciples in a digestible way. Just like how a mother bird would actually go search for a prey, bring it, but then the baby birds that are still waiting in the nest, waiting for the mother, as soon as the mother comes, they'll be very eager. Have you seen? They'll be very eager to eat. But the food which the mother brings, it's not digestible because the digestive system is not fully developed yet for the baby birds. So what will the mother do? It will chew the prey, the food. And then half chewed food, when the mother is convinced that yes, this is something that my kids can manage, then that he feeds. Next time you see a bird feeding baby birds, mother bird feeding baby birds, you can observe that. Bhaktishwar Maharaj says, this is the duty of Acharya. The Shastras as it is, it was there even before Prabhupada was starting ISKCON, but nobody could follow. Bhagavad Gita was there, but people were getting even more confused. Prabhupada took it and then he made it digestible. He made it in a way that is practical for people to follow. He made it in a way that without compromising on the gravity of the original message, Prabhupada made the message relatable in our day-to-day lives. So, it's only due to Prabhupada that we have access to Krishna, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. So, it's extremely important because everything we are actually doing as part of our Krishna consciousness comes from instructions of Prabhupada. What Prabhupada gives priority to, we also need to give priority. There is no point in circumventing the instruction of Acharya and discovering our own. Oh, this is given in Garuda Puran, this is given in Agni Puran. We don't know any of that. Bhagavata Puran we know because there are purports. Other Puran we don't even know the purports. we don't even know the meaning of that. So we have to be very careful, especially in Kali Yuga. Mind will throw so many different options at us, saying, hey, this one looks very cool, this one looks very easy. You can do Dandavats Parikram all the way across the length and breadth of India, or you can pick up the beads and chant. Prabhupada says, pick up the beads, chant 16 rounds, spread the message. So we don't need to think beyond our Stapita Acharya. We need to understand our approach to practice of Bhakti Yoga starts and ends with instructions of Prabhupada. That's it. We don't need to go anything beyond. In the name of, I'm going more deep. We don't need to go more deep. In fact, we cannot go more deeper than what Srila Prabhupada has given. So everything is in Srila Prabhupada's books. Everything is in Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So we have to be mindful of that, and we have to be very grateful for the shelter which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has sent us in the form of Srila Prabhupada. While Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was seriously considering meeting with the Mayavadi sannyasis, the Maharashtrian Brahmana approached him and extended an invitation. The Brahmana submitted his invitation with great humility, and he touched the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted his invitation, and the next day, after finishing his noontime activities, he went to the Brahmana's house. I have already described Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's deliverance of Mayavadi sannyasis in the 7th chapter of the Adi Lila when I described the glories of the Panchatattva. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Prabhu, Gadadhar Prabhu and Srivasa. Since I have already described this incident very elaborately, so if you want to know more details about the conversation that happened between them and how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered, you can read Adi Lila chapter 7. Beginning from the day on which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed his mercy to the Mayavadi sannyasis, there were vivid discussions about this conversation among the inhabitants of Varanasi. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the invitation of Maharashtrian Brahmana. He went there and he delivered. After he delivered, converted all the Mayavadis to take up Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, this becomes flash news across Varanasi, and everyone was talking about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu influenced all the Mayavadi sannyasis to take up Krishna consciousness. Crowds of people came to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from that day on, and scholars of various scriptures discussed different subject matters with the Lord. When people came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to discuss the principles of various scriptures, the Lord defeated their false conclusions and established the predominance of devotional service to the Lord. With logic and argument, he very politely changed their minds. Normally, if we know we are in the good side and someone else is in the bad side, if somebody is doing mistake, we take extreme pleasure defeating them. And more publicly we can do, better it is. So our glories will be sung everywhere. That's our mentality. But if you see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, with logic and argument, he very politely changed their minds. Simply dealing with them in a way not to disturb their ego too much, but as an expert physician, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was just addressing the disease that their consciousness was under. So they all happily took shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with their hearts changed to worship Sri Krishna. As soon as people received instructions from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they began to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Thus, everyone laughed, chanted and danced with the Lord. All the Mayavadi sannyasis offered their obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then began to discuss his movement, giving up their studies of Vedanta and Mayavada philosophy. So they gave up and they took up Caitanya Caritamrta and Srimad Bhagavatam. One of the disciples of Prakashananda Saraswati, who was as learned as his guru. So Prakashananda Saraswati, he was the leader of all the Mayavadi sannyasis who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeated and converted them to Vaishnavism. So one of his chief disciples began to speak in that assembly, offering all respects to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana himself. When he explains the Vedanta Sutra, he does so very nicely. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Haya Sakshad Narayana Vyasa Sutrera Artha Karena Atimanorama. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains the direct meaning of Upanishads. When all learned scholars hear this, their minds and ears are satisfied. Giving up the direct meaning of the Vedanta Sutra, the Upanishads, Sankaracharya imagines some other interpretation. All the interpretations of Sankaracharya are imaginary. Such imaginary interpretations are verbally accepted by learned scholars, but they do not appeal to the heart. The words of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are firm and convincing, and I accept them as true. In this age of Kali, one cannot be delivered from the material clutches simply by formally accepting the renounced order. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's explanation of the verse beginning Harer Nama is not only pleasing to the ear, but is strong factual evidence. In this age of Kali, one cannot attain liberation without taking to the devotional service of the Lord. In this age, even if one chants the holy name of Krishna imperfectly, he still attains liberation very easily. My dear Lord, devotional service unto you is the only auspicious path. If one gives it up simply for speculative knowledge or the understanding that these living beings are spirit souls and the material world is false, he undergoes a great deal of trouble. He only gains troublesome and inauspicious activities. His actions are like beating a husk that is already devoid of rice. His labor becomes fruitless. The word Brahman, the greatest, indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead full in all six opulences. But if we take the one-sided impersonalist view, his fullness is diminished. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra and the Puranas all describe the activities of the spiritual potency of the Lord. If one cannot accept the personal activities of the Lord, he jokes foolishly and gives an impersonal description. The Mayavadis do not recognize the personal form of the Lord as spiritual and full of bliss. This is a great sin. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's statements are actually factual. So in this way, he is giving references amongst all the Mayavadi sannyasis in that assembly, establishing the position of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and establishing about the effectiveness of Bhakti Yoga as the, not yet another means, as the only means. Kalau nasteva gatiranyata. So this is the only way. So he gives scriptural references from Bhagavad Gita, from Srimad Bhagavatam, so on and so forth. Text 42. Sripad Sankaracharya has given his interpretation an imaginary meaning. It does not actually appeal to the mind of any sane man. He has done this to convince the atheists and bring them under his control. The atheists, headed by the Mayavadi philosophers, do not care for liberation or Krishna's mercy. They simply continue to put forward false arguments and counter theories to atheistic philosophy, not considering or engaging in spiritual matters. Whatever meaning Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives is perfect. Any other interpretation is only a distortion. So says who? So says a former Mayavadi sannyasi. So we don't need to go anywhere. We can simply take instructions of Srila Prabhupada through these books, who is the Senapati Bhakta. Srila Prabhupada is the Senapati Bhakta, or the commander-in-chief of all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. After saying this, the disciple of Prakashananda Saraswati began to chant the holy name of Krishna. Hearing this, Prakashananda Saraswati made the following statement. Acharyera agraha advaita vadastapite tata shutrartha vakya kare anyarite. Prakashananda Saraswati said, Shankaracharya was very eager to establish the philosophy of monism. Therefore, he explained the Vedanta Sutra or Vedanta philosophy in a different way to support monistic philosophy. If one accepts the personality of Godhead, the philosophy that maintains that God and the living entity are one cannot be established. Therefore, Shankaracharya argued against and refuted all kinds of revealed scriptures. Anyone who wants to establish his own opinion or philosophy certainly cannot explain any scripture according to the principle of direct interpretation. It's very important. Studying of Shastras is very important because how do we understand who is speaking properly? Even if somebody poses himself or herself as a guru, we need to know who is bona fide and who isn't. Now, in order for us to know, the only way how we can understand what is correct and not is through Shastras only. There are three ways how we can study spiritual truths. Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, you might have come across. Guru is the spiritual master. Sadhu, one who is practicing the spiritual sadhana, is Sadhu. And then Shastra. But of the three, Shastra is still considered as the ultimate source of authority. In order to even understand who is Guru, you need to know Shastra. In fact, one who acts in accordance with the Shastra, only such a person is considered Guru. Same way, Sadhu. One can concoct so many things. Prabhupada says, even if you fast on Ekadashi, it's devotional service. We were discussing this point actually in one class. If you see, when Durvasa Muni comes to Ambarish Maharaj's assembly, Durvasa is a Brahmana, son of Atri and Anasuya. He is partial representation of Lord Shiva. So this is his position. He is a Brahmana. He is coming to the assembly, to the home of Ambarish Maharaj. And now he says, Ambarish Maharaj is about to break the fast. So he says, let us break fast together. I'll quickly go, take bath and come in Yamunaji. He goes, he delays, clock is ticking. Ambarish Maharaj is supposed to break the fast. And then Ambarish Maharaj consults with his men, in the assembly, and they quote Shastras and they say, all right, it's better you break the fast by drinking, because according to Shastras, drinking water is considered to be fast, breaking the fast and not breaking the fast. So he uses that provision and he drinks the fast to finish. But then Durvasa Muni gets very offended. Have you ever come across a personality who gets offended because you drank little bit of water after doing Nirjala Ekadashi? And that too during the time of fast breaking, Durvasa gets. So when Durvasa comes, he gets very angry. And then you know what happened in that pastime. Now the question is, Ambarish Maharaj, he is in the presence of Durvasa Muni. Even if you go by, moral principle, even according to Shastra, even according to Dharma Shastra, if you see Atiti Deva Bhava, whoever who comes, Atiti is guest, they are considered to be equal to demigods. They should be treated like that. Now here, Durvasa Muni is even higher than demigods. He is a Brahmana. So now, Ambarish Maharaj, by going and just breaking his fast, is he transgressing the etiquette of respecting the Brahmanas? Because he didn't wait, correct? He should have waited. It looks like he is giving more priority for his fast than serving Brahmanas, correct? That's what it comes to. So then, was Ambarish Maharaj at fault? Acharyas, when they actually bring up this point, they say, actually if you worship Brahmanas, you will get only punya, you will only get material piety. But practicing Ekadasi we do for what? For pleasing Radha Gopinath. This is devotional service. One comes under devotional service, another one comes under material piety. You worship Brahmanas, worshipping Brahmanas, you cannot go back to Godhead. Demons also worship Brahmanas to become immune to, Indra's Vajra, you will come across. So it will give you material prosperity, worshipping Brahmanas. But observing Ekadashi is devotional service. Devotional service takes obviously topmost priority. So Prabhupada says, if somebody practices fasting or Ekadashi and they fast on Ekadashi from grains and they break the fast next day, Prabhupada says they will get spiritual credit. But Prabhupada says, same fasting, Prabhupada says in India, politicians do for political purpose. And Prabhupada says, This is demoniac, because Shastra doesn't support it. Same activity. So even something which looks like, piety, it's not even pious, it's demoniac. Prabhupada says it's a tamoguna only, totally concocted. There's not even punya in that. At least if you worship Brahmanas, there is some punya according to Shastra. But if you concoct something and say, oh, I'm also fasting, it doesn't work like that. So the ultimate authority is always Shastra. Shastra should tell us. Okay, so it's mentioned, if somebody performs Mandanam, Lokaranjanam, it's given. If somebody performs Hari Bhakti, but neglecting the Shastras, not worship of demigods, even worshipping Supreme Lord Hari, but without complying with the Shastras, they simply cause disturbance in the society. So we have to be careful. We cannot concoct things without authority. We cannot concoct things saying, oh, anyway, I'm only chanting the holy name of the Lord. Prabhupada says, we don't chant the mantra that doesn't come through our parampara, even though it may be holy names. We cannot manufacture our own holy name. So Prabhupada was very, very clear in that. So practicing bhakti, we don't need to look beyond the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. If you simply follow instructions of Prabhupada, Prabhupada is a Ragatmika Bhakta, you simply follow Prabhupada, we will become Raganuga Bhaktas. Isn't that cool? All we have to do is just chant Hare Krishna, follow 4 regulative principles. Even though this is coming under Vaidhi only, still that is good enough to qualify us as becoming a Raganuga Bhakta. Why? Simply because we have instruction of Srila Prabhupada and we are following. By definition, Raganuga Bhakta means one who is following one of the eternal resident of Goloka Vrindavan very closely. And for us, one and only hope is Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So Prabhupada is the only hope. Simply by following Prabhupada, we don't need to look here, there. We will, our so-called Vaidhi Bhakti, actually we fail quite miserably, even in Vaidhi Bhakti, it doesn't matter. Still, simply because Prabhupada told us to do, you do this, even though we are actually doing Vaidhi Bhakti, when it goes to Krishna, it will go as Raganuga Bhakti, simply because we are following what Prabhupada said. So we have to be very clear, studying Shastras is important, there is no other way. So now here, one point which the disciple of Prakashananda Saraswati, former disciple of Prakashananda Saraswati says, because now all of them are disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's how it works in Vedic times. If there is a tarka, there is a debate, the losing party along with the leader, everyone become the servants of the one who wins the argument. In this case, it's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is their glory. Who here who in the world wouldn't want to become a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forces his mercy upon Mayavadis. But if you read the realizations of the former disciple of Prakashananda Saraswati, you will understand he is saying they have done research, PhD, everything in Vedanta Sutra, in Sariraka Bhashya, the commentary of Vedanta Sutra written by Shankaracharya. But he is saying something interesting. He is saying whoever reads that interpretation, they feel void in their heart. They feel something is missing in their heart. It actually makes them unhappy. If you read that, that's what he is actually saying. That the false arguments which there's one verse where he was actually mentioning that. All the interpretations, this is verse 27, Madhya-lila chapter 25. Listen carefully. He is saying all the interpretations of Shankaracharya are imaginary. Such imaginary interpretations are verbally accepted by the learned scholars, but they do not appeal to the heart. Sometimes you talk with your friend. You may not agree with your friend, but just to move on from there, you would say, yeah, that's true. But actually it doesn't mean nothing to you. In fact, you may even disagree. That's how they have been studying Vedanta Sutra of Shankaracharya. The words of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are firm and convincing, and I accept them as true. In this age of Kali, one cannot be delivered from material clutches simply by formally accepting the renounced order. That's what he's saying. So, studying Shastra that is coming through parampara is very important. Only they are capable of transforming our heart. Only they are capable of appealing to our heart. If something is dry, you start reading it, you lose inspiration even to read further. But Krishna book stories, we just keep telling, it's coming through parampara. It's Shastra. We never feel bored. We all know, how many times do we know, or have we come across, have we heard Krishna dancing on top of Kaliya and how he subdued? How many of you know this pastime already? Come on. Now if I narrate, will you walk out of the class? No. It's still exciting, correct? Oh, Krishna subdued. There's no new news. It's actually the same old news. But because Krishna is doing, it is so appealing to our heart. Because the information is coming through the parampara, it is so appealing to our heart. Okay, so practicing Krishna consciousness, but strictly in accordance with the instruction of the previous Acharya is very, very important. Whatever meaning Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives is perfect. Any other interpretation is only a distortion. The words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are a shower of nectar. Sri Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Vani Amritera Dara Tino He Kahaya Vastu Say Tatvasara. The words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are a shower of nectar. Whatever he concludes to be the ultimate truth is indeed the summum bonum of all spiritual knowledge. After hearing all these statements, the Maharashtrian Brahmana very jubilantly went to inform Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is what the disciple of Prakashananda Saraswati is saying. And now Maharashtrian Brahmana, same Maharashtrian Brahmana initially who was feeling very depressed hearing about the blasphemous statements of them, who went and complained to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now after hearing the same people glorifying about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, now he is very jubilantly running back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to inform him. When Maharashtrian Brahmana went to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord was going to the temple of Bindu Madhava after bathing in the waters of Panchanada. When the Lord was on his way, the Maharashtrian Brahmana informed him about the incident that took place in the camp of Prakashananda Saraswati. Hearing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled happily. Upon reaching the temple of Bindu Madhava, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, seeing the beauty of Lord Bindu Madhava, became overwhelmed in ecstatic love. He then began to dance in the courtyard of the temple. There were 4 people accompanying Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and these were Chandrasekhara, Paramananda Puri, Tapan Mishra and Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami is still there. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he goes, then he would go to Puri and he would ask Sanatana Goswami to go and join his brother Rupa Goswami in Vrindavan. They chanted, Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudana. In all directions, hundreds of thousands of people began to chant Hari Hari. Thus there arose a tumultuous and auspicious sound that filled the entire universe. When Prakashananda Saraswati, who was staying nearby, heard this tumultuous chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, he and his disciples immediately came to see the Lord. You will get a glimpse of this during Rath Yatra. And Rath Yatra is back this year in July. Devotees have already booked the date. So when you go for Rath Yatra, you remember all this. You can read the sections of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu initially also. The Puri Rath Yatra description is given, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would divide all the associates into different parties and how they would chant, dance, Bedi Kirtana, Beda Kirtana. You will come across so many descriptions about that. So when you go for Rath Yatra, you can remember, you will be able to relate. Like here, Prakashananda Saraswati was staying nearby. I remember once we were going, we forgot something. This is like, I'm talking long ago. Long means not very long, 2007 sometime. So one devotee asked me to get something from the kitchen here, so I came. By the time I drove the car back, the Rath Yatra started already. So we parked the car, I immediately gave it to the devotee because he was setting up the prasadam stall. Then I was running, but I don't know, but you can follow the sound. Hari bol, and like you run, and as you run, you can see the holy name getting louder and louder and louder, and then everyone chants, dance, and like, yeah, then you can go and join there. So here, Prakashananda Saraswati is also staying nearby. Suddenly he is hearing Harinam. So immediately he goes and joins. When Prakashananda Saraswati saw the Lord, he and his disciples also joined the chanting with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prakashananda Saraswati was charmed by the Lord's dancing and ecstatic love and by the transcendental beauty of his body. Ecstatic spiritual transformations began to take place in the Lord's body. His body trembled and his voice faltered. He perspired, turned pale, and wept a constant flow of tears, which wet all the people standing there. The eruptions on the Lord's body appeared like kadamba flowers. All the people were astonished to see Lord's jubilation and humility and to hear him talk in ecstasy. Indeed, all the residents of Benares, Kashi, saw the bodily transformations and were astonished. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regained his external consciousness, he saw many Mayavadi sannyasis and other people were gathered there. He therefore suspended his dancing for the time being. After stopping the Kirtana, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is a great example of humility, offered prayers unto the feet of Prakashananda Saraswati. At this, Prakashananda Saraswati immediately came forward and clasped the Lord's lotus feet. Prabhu kahe tumi jagad guru pujayatama ami tomara nahi sishyara shishya sama. When Prakashananda Saraswati caught hold of the Lord's lotus feet, the Lord is telling him, my dear sir, you are the spiritual master of the whole world. Because Mayavadi sannyasis, they address Jagat Guru. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, you are the spiritual master of the whole world, and therefore you are most worshipable. As far as I am concerned, I am not even on the level of disciple of your disciple. Ami tomara nahai sishyara shishya sama. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, you are a great spiritually advanced personality, and therefore you cannot worship a person like me. I am far inferior. If you do so, my spiritual power will be diminished, for you are as good as the impersonal Brahman. I'll stop at this point. Once one Prabhupada's disciple, who was a sannyasi in India, he was telling Prabhupada, wherever we go, as soon as people see us as sannyasis, they come and touch our feet. But we heard in one of your morning walks, Prabhupada, that if somebody touches our feet, their karma comes to us. Prabhupada says yes. Prabhupada, now what are we supposed to do? Prabhupada smiles and he says, if somebody touches your feet, you touch their head. Short circuit. Karma comes and then goes back again. So here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually telling, you are a great spiritually advanced personality and therefore you cannot worship a person like me. I am far inferior. If you do so, my spiritual power will be diminished. For you are as good as impersonal Brahman. Of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, words have much more deeper meaning here. He is telling how he used to formally worship Supreme Brahman and they would think Brahman is the topmost. So here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, you are used to Mayavada philosophy, and in Mayavada, according to Mayavada philosophy, everyone is God. And you are also Supreme Brahman. And such a great Mahashaya, if you touch my feet, I will actually end up being an aparadhi, so please don't do. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is addressing that way. Of course, Prakashananda Saraswati, as you will see, he has a full change of heart and he takes full shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We'll stop there. Any questions or comments or additions? We'll stop there. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan ki, Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki, Shri Gauranita ki, Sri Caitanya Caritamrta ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, devotees in Mayapur TV, YouTube and Facebook ki, Jai, Shri Radha Gopinath's devotees ki, Jai, Jai Nittai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai.